Survival of the fittest. Species better adapted to their environment live on, while others perish. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2.
Credits to Wet Socks for making this iceberg, and to my girlfriend for helping me with the script. EA. This entry's pretty simple. I feel like everyone knows EA. It's a company that, well, now owns PopCap, but also has a pretty bad reputation for recent years. From microtransactions to really bad launchers and Sims DLCs costing the price of a mortgage, this company has made some pretty questionable decisions. If you know about Battlefront 2, well, Plants vs. Zombies. I mean, you clicked on this video because you probably know what it is. If you don't, I am shocked, but, you know, just a tower defense game made in 2009. Happens to be an absolute banger of a game. Just plants shoot at zombies. Don't let your, brains get eaten out. And, well, that's about it. It's a pretty easy entry. Plants vs. Zombies 2. Plants vs. Zombies 2 is the sequel to Plants vs. Zombies. It's pretty well liked, aside from questionable microtransactions, such as certain characters like the Chomper and Snow Pea being locked behind a paywall. It's really shitty, but EA bought them out, so it makes sense, I guess. It is a very good game, though. It has a lot more levels, zombies, and plants than the first. Just really annoying about the whole pay for plants situation. They introduced some newer plants that are pretty iconic to the franchise now, such as the Bloomerang, Bonk Choy, and Snapdragon. There unfortunately wasn't a PC port for this game, so you have to play it on some sort of emulator or just on your phone. And if there was a PC port, probably be on Origin, so I'm not sure if people would like that too much. The whole game is centered around time travel, so you go to different eras like ancient Egypt, pirates, cowboys, nomad eras. It's pretty weird. Good game though. My girlfriend's been addicted to it for the past few weeks, and it's just more Plants vs. Zombies. Can't really go wrong with it, except EA sort of did, but Plants vs. Zombies 3. Plants vs. Zombies 3 is the, as of now, soft-launched third mainline game in the series. It recently launched into 4 different countries and has had an alpha and beta available for few people for the past few years. So far, it looks like the game has more story, but there's been some pretty mixed impressions on how the whole game kind of flows and there possibly being an energy mechanic. I really hope it's not as bad as I'm thinking it is, but if it is, I don't know where this franchise is gonna go. Style was really cool though, and they've introduced some new zombies that people have been wanting for a while now that'll be mentioned in later entries. Garden Warfare. Garden Warfare is my favorite game in the entire franchise. This game is just amazing. Garden Warfare is a third-person shooter spin-off game that launched in February of 2014 for the Xbox 360, Xbox One, PS4, and PC. I personally remember logging hundreds of hours into this game, and sure, there were microtransactions, but it was nothing that you couldn't earn in the game, and it wasn't that grindy either. Unlike some other EA games, Battlefront 2, this stuff you could get pretty quickly. You could pay real money for some cosmetics and whatnot, but it really didn't matter. In this game, you could play from a different selection of plants and zombies. So there were different classes, such as the pea shooter and soldier being the attack class, and sunflower and scientist being the healers. There were different modes, such as Team Vanquish, which was pretty much just team deathmatch, Garden Ops, which was defending through 10 waves, defending this little garden. It was pretty much like zombies in any COD game, but a bit different because it was Plants vs. Zombies. And Suburbanation, which was basically domination or conquest, if you've played those in any other games. In this game, you could also spawn little plants and pots or zombie minions to help you in the different multiplayer modes or single player. All of these would be ones that you couldn't play as, so like the brown coat or maybe repeater pea shooter from the games. You couldn't play as those as actual classes, so they made those, say for the plants, so they could just sit in a pot and defend from the zombies, or zombies to go out and attack. Laura Shigihara. Laura Shigihara is the composer for the soundtrack of Plants vs. Zombies. She made some really good songs like Loon Bloom, Moon Grain, Zombie on Your Lawn. I mean, the entire soundtrack is just so good for these games. There's not a whole lot to say for this entry, but she did also work on some songs for Deltarune, Super Meat Boy, and some Minecraft fan songs. George Fan. George Fan was the designer and creative director for Plants vs. Zombies. He doesn't work for the series anymore, but he is working on his own game that looks to be a cute platformer called Hard Hat Wombat. A lot of fans of Plants vs. Zombies consider this guy basically the founder of the franchise, and well, he just made mine and a lot of other people's childhoods. Dr. Zomboss. Dr. Zomboss is the leader of the zombies. His first appearance was in the first game as the final boss, and has since been in every Plants vs. Zombies game. If you've played Garden Warfare or Battle for Neighborville, you'd get used to him saying a whole lot of random stuff popping up at the top of your screen. And he has a pretty weird voice like our next topic. Crazy Dave is the first character you see in Plants vs. Zombies. If you've played any of the games, you'll know this guy. He talks in a language that no one but the chat bubble can understand, and he loves tacos. He loves tacos so much that in the second game, he decides to travel back in time so he can eat his taco again. Pretty weird but sick guy, and essential for the entire franchise. Started out with just you defending his house with different plants to now he's got a manor in Battle for Neighborville. The Tree of Wisdom. The Tree of Wisdom is a tree that after beating adventure mode in the first game, you could grow and he would give you certain tips and cheats the taller he gets. He's the backbone of Plants vs. Zombies post-game. Personally, I never got to this stage of the game, but it looks pretty sick. Zen Garden. The Zen Garden is a garden in the Plants vs. Zombies games where you can farm and sell different plants you've grown. In Plants vs. Zombies 2, you could get certain boosts to where every time you would plant one, it would activate that one's super ability. Like for the sunflower, if you planted it after getting its boost, it would immediately throw out X amount of sun. I believe it was 3. It's pretty broken. It's not, I wouldn't say it's broken. It's hard to get. You just have to wait a lot of time, but when you use it, it's extremely good. Selling the plants that you don't use as boosts, you could use to buy either new plants or power-ups. It was a big part of post-game Plants vs. Zombies 1 and a big part of just progression in Plants vs. Zombies 2. Game of the Year Edition. Plants vs. Zombies Game of the Year Edition is the Steam version of the game for PC. Even though it's not the original version of the game, there's zero difference to it, aside from this version of the game actually having a modding scene and that it's just on Steam. Otherwise, gameplay mechanic-wise, content, there's nothing different. Little cut in here, there was something different. You could customize a zombie to look however you wanted them to look. Not a big thing, didn't affect gameplay at all. Giddy Park. Giddy Park is the hub for the Battle for Neighborville game. Since I personally haven't played this game yet, all I could find is from stuff I've looked up, so I don't know if there's many secrets that I'm missing out or what. In this lobby type world, you could find different treasure chests and do different activities and riding rides, bounties. There's a whole bunch of content that you could do outside of just the multiplayer or single player aspect of the game. There was one puzzle that seems to be everywhere when I looked this place up, called the Gnome Puzzle. The Gnome Puzzle is different for every session of the lobby, meaning there's no clear solution aside from finding these different slabs and emoting on them. Once completed, you'd get the gnomish spot costume for the nightcap. Pretty sick hub world from what I can tell. Generally similar to the one from Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 2. Backyard Battleground. Backyard Battleground is the hub for Garden Warfare 2, where you could find different Easter eggs, different treasure chests, fight minion versions of zombies, travel to multiplayer, do missions. It was a fun place to mess around. It was nothing too crazy. There was a nice sewer system, little town on the outskirts. Just a nice hub for going to the different parts of the game. Sticker packs. Sticker packs are the way of progression in Garden Warfare games. You could get different zombies or plants that were from the actual mainline games, but you couldn't play as them, to plant and have them help you for whatever mission or multiplayer match that you're doing. And you could also get cosmetics from them, some of which would actually change how you could play. Some including, like, they had a Chester Chomper, which was a Cheeto collab on Garden Warfare 2. Very weird collab that I didn't understand too much, but it was sick. It also had things like the Plasma Cactus, where it was more of a charge up shot, but it wasn't too broken if someone had one of these other skins versus the vanilla, say, cactus instead of Plasma Cactus. You could also unlock different hats and smaller customizations for the playable characters. They weren't too bad to earn. You could buy them with real money, but again, none of them were really game breaking. It was more just cosmetic. Spadow, Powie, and Doom are the different comic style pop-ups for when something explodes in the Plants vs. Zombies franchise. Not too much for this entry, it's just what happens when something explodes. That's about it. Is the absolute banger made by Laura Shigihara. Not too much to this entry aside from it being probably my favorite song in the entire soundtrack. I mean, just listen to it for a second. It's just a really, really good song. Power Mints. Power Mints were just different power-ups you could get in Plants vs. Zombies 2. It would do different things to the game. They were pretty helpful. There's not too much I could find on them. I didn't use them too much. Just another part of the gameplay of Plants vs. Zombies 2. Battle for Neighborville. Battle for Neighborville is the sort of third Garden Warfare game. It's the closest thing we've gotten to a Garden Warfare 3 so far, and since I've played at this point very little of it, I personally can't say if it's really too good or not. I'll say some of the animations are a bit goofy, and it is weird adjusting to actually having a sprint in this game. But from what I could tell, it's basically Garden Warfare 2, add a few classes, make it a bit more chaotic. It's that. From what I've heard, a lot of people still prefer Garden Warfare 2 way more, and I would agree, but that's just because I've played so much of it. This is basically just third Garden Warfare game. People don't like it as much. That's about it. Zack Scott Games. Zack Scott Games was and still is a massive part of the Plants vs. Zombies YouTube scene. This guy is up to episode 1145, and he has recently been doing videos on Plants vs. Zombies 3. For someone who doesn't live in one of the regions where Plants vs. Zombies 3 is released yet, this guy is basically my only source of Plants vs. Zombies 3 gameplay. Plants vs. Zombies mods and ROM hacks. Plants vs. Zombies has quite a weird history with mods and ROM hacks. Some mods are just texture packs, like adding troll faces to every character in the game, and some of them completely remaster or remake the game and add expansion-sized content to it, such as the Plants vs. Zombies expansion mod, filling in the game with new levels, zombies, plants, and gameplay mechanics. It's crazy to see how good some of these mods are and why the troll face one is on the front page of the modding site. But it's a pretty active modding community and I would recommend checking it out. Premium plants. Premium plants are the paid plants I was talking about earlier in the EA topic. To me, I understand that EA needs to make money, right? But just charge for the game. There's so many plants that you need to pay for. And I would understand, like, the new ones, okay, it sucks that you have to pay for them. That's fine. But the Snow Pea, Cactus, and Chomper are all locked behind a paywall. Those three are a extremely big part of the franchise. They were all in the first game. Like, they are iconic. And you have to pay $3 to $5 for them. I think this is where the franchise started going downhill, and I would think a lot of people agree with me. Hashtag Save Garden Warfare 2. I wasn't too aware of this movement when it was going on, but due to the outrage over servers and exploiters in Garden Warfare 2, the subreddit for it launched a hashtag Save Garden Warfare 2 campaign, backed by several YouTubers like Mr. JT, Vile Hyperion, and LT Dark Ring. They seem to help bring this game back to some of its former glory. With how bad everything was online, the game was practically dead, and now I can actually go into servers and find players, so this whole movement seems to have been pretty good. It maybe didn't meet the expectations they were hoping for, but it certainly brought a lot of people back into the franchise. Bloom and Doom Seed Co. Bloom and Doom Seed Company is, well, for this tier list, it seems like the first one that's not extremely surface level. It's the company that makes all of the seed packets you use in the different Plants vs. Zombies games. It's apparent that Bloom and Doom Seed Company also specializes in non-plants, such as the flower pot, spike rock, and mushrooms that do not grow from seeds. In the Plants vs. Zombies official guidebook, it stated that the company was founded in 1968. So how early on people started protecting themselves with Plants vs. Zombies? Oh, Plants vs. Zombies reference. That seems to be unclear, but it does seem a lot further back than people were expecting. Plants vs. Zombies also had many concept names for what it was going to be called, one of them being Zombotany, and just like Zombotany, Bloom and Doom was going to be one of the original names for the first game before it released. Tier 2, The Fog. Yeti Zombie. The Yeti is a reoccurring zombie in the Plants vs. Zombies games, and most people don't know this, but he was actually in the first game. Through your initial playthrough of Adventure Mode, you won't see him at all, but on subsequent playthroughs, he's guaranteed to spawn on the level 4-10. In this level, he'll slowly walk through the lawn for a short while, before turning around and attempt to retreat. And if you kill him, you get 5 diamonds, and each time you do it after on subsequent playthroughs, you'll get 4. He also has a chance to randomly spawn on other levels in your subsequent playthrough. He has been a pretty big character and coming back in future games, like in Garden Warfare games. He has different variants like the Treasure Yeti, Sasquatch, and Yeti King. Versus Mode. Versus Mode is a 2-player game mode featured in the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Nintendo DS versions of Plants vs. Zombies. The goal for the zombies is pretty simple. You're trying to overwhelm the plants and attempt to invade Dave's house and make him go bye-bye. But for the plants, to make it more interesting, you have to shoot down 3 target zombies that are lined up in the back row of the zombies' lanes. The further the player progresses through Adventure Mode, the more plants that'll be available in this. In this mode, like how plants would use sun to place plants, for the zombie side, it's brains instead. Still the same mechanic, they're just popping up and you have to press on them. This mode also includes 3 new zombies. The target zombies, like I mentioned, trash can zombies, and zombie gravestones. Trial of Nomus. The Trials of Nomus are areas in the Trials of Nomus DLC in Garden Warfare 2 that can be accessed by getting trial keys from the 50 Rainbow Star chest in the Town Hall, which respawns each new portal event, or by getting the Torch and Tail upgrade DLC. This chest will always drop a trial key. Every trial has a different goal to accomplish, and after beating the trial, a code will be revealed, which can then be used to unleash the Guardian of the corresponding color. After defeating this Guardian, a stone bust will explode, revealing a portal that'll take the player to a chest, either containing a legendary cosmetic or backyard battleground item. I never knew about this when it came out, but it looks really well made, and that's kind of shocking for just a one-off thing in Garden Warfare 2. Dark Horse Comics. Dark Horse Comics has published the entire series of Plants vs. Zombies comics, which I didn't know this franchise had any comics until now. And even the main characters of Plants vs. Zombies 3 were based off of the comics, and a lot of characters in the comics also get mentioned in the games, which I'll talk about in later entries. Slender Man Easter Egg. God, I love weird Easter eggs like this, and for the time it makes so much sense. In the woods of Zomboss Estate in Garden Warfare 1, if you look through these trees, Slender Man can be seen. And this Easter egg got so popular that PopCap decided to update it when they released the Tactical Taco Party DLC. So now, when you go and try to check on Slender Man, he's getting eaten alive by a chomper. Rule 34. Weird-ass costumes. This entry refers to weird costumes that were made for Halloween. There's a shockingly large amount of these, and I'm surprised they're even still available for sale. The site that was linked in the Iceberg, and that seems to have the most costumes, is just called HalloweenCostumes.com. And I will put a link to that in the description, because I know it's goofy enough for a lot of people to buy, just hearing about it. Deadplants.exe. Deadplants.exe was a pretty well-known creepypasta made by Mooplerish in late 2011. This creepypasta is so bad that it was actually deleted off of the creepypasta site and put onto the Trollpasta wiki. To sum up this one a little bit, so you don't have to read the entire multi-paragraph long creepypasta, it basically revolves around someone downloading a hacked version of Plants vs. Zombies where the gravestones in the game had names of recently deceased celebrities, and after every level, the pitch and volume of the music would get louder. And the protagonist of this creepypasta decided to not mute the music until the very last level for some reason. I know, very scary stuff. And after beating the final level, it went to a black screen with white text on it saying, "Why did you do this to us?" I wondered what that meant, he said. And later on, when he unmuted the music again, there was a level that didn't have any music. Split in half, 2 lawns on either side of the map. I know, this is getting intriguing. As he planted plants, he saw other plants be planted on the other side as well. Well, I'll just read this excerpt for you. A pea shooter appeared, except this pea shooter looked really creepy. In the place of eyes were dark, soulless voids. Unlike with most creepypastas I read, the eyes didn't have a red pupil in the middle or anything, just dark, soulless voids. It started firing peas at the sunflower that I had in my row, except the peas it fired looked old and diseased. It ended up killing my sunflower, like in Zombotany. Then, after that, 2 sunflowers were planted in the lane above it, and they had the same dark, soulless voids for eyes. Whenever one of the plants on the other side was planted, the screen grew a bit darker and less saturated. After he loses this level, after the screen gets so dark to the point where it's pitch black, he heard the normal zombie crunching sound you'd hear when you lose. And instead of the normal yelling you'd hear once you lose a level of Plants vs. Zombies, the screen turned vertically striped and red, and a loud, distorted scream played. Then the game closed itself. I know, it's okay to get scared. Anyways, this is basically just an infamously bad creepypasta, so bad to the point where it got deleted. The only way I could find it is on the wiki page. Ice Level. The Ice Level is one of the 17 hidden mini-games in the Limbo page, an entry later on that I'll talk about, which can only be played using a cheat engine or a Plants vs. Zombies toolkit. The mini-game was considered useless as no one knew how to play it, and it only had 6 seed slots, with the plants pea shooter, cherry bomb, walnut, repeater, snow pea, and chomper. Little insert here. As I'm editing, I realized in the original recording, I believed that the level was just never complete. But with some more research, I found out that it's actually an April Fool's prank. George Fan said this on Twitter. Pretty good April Fool's prank, pranking people for over a decade? A little over? Rux. This is Rux, a character who was released in the Trials of Nomus DLC that owns a shop called Rux's Bazaar. He sold many different cosmetics, the most interesting of which were exclusive legendary customizations that cost 500,000 coins, classic items referring to gestures and customizations from the original Garden Warfare that were 50,000, and legendary character pieces that cost 1,000,000 coins. His stock changed every time he appears, and also he has returned for the Battle for Neighborville game, selling items for rainbow stars instead of coins. Crazy Dave model. So this entry I'm not 100% sure on. It's hard to find very much information about it aside from a couple Reddit posts. But there was a model of Crazy Dave found in the files of Garden Warfare, suggesting that he was going to be in the game as an actual character and not just announcer. My thinking is that if this is real, it's probably a scrapped idea of having him in some sort of campaign type thing or for some form of announcements, but I realized for Garden Warfare 1, he was just a PNG. So I really don't know what he was doing in this game. Google Translate. This one's very short, but Penny the time-traveling RV's translator is called Google Translate. Sure, I know, but I think it's funny enough to get a quick little insert here. Cheat codes. In the first Plants vs. Zombies, you could put in cheat codes to change certain aspects of the game. None were necessarily game-changing, but they did add some funny cosmetics, like if you put in future or mustache, it would add futuristic sunglasses or mustaches to the zombies. These codes could be put in on PC, but also the console versions of the games. On console, you'd have to press both triggers and bumpers at the same time, and then a menu would pop up. From what I could find, there's 8 different cheat codes, and 3 of them require reaching certain heights with a Tree of Wisdom. Giga Gargantuar. The Giga Gargantuar, or however you pronounce this, is the second strongest zombie after Dr. Zomboss. It is a Gargantuar with red eyes that is only seen in these levels. This zombie has double the health of a normal Gargantuar, having 6,000 HP, and in the Social Edition version of the Almanac, it stated that he is the overlord in the zombie base camp, and even his own people will avoid him and make a detour. The Limbo Page. The Limbo Page is a hidden amount of data in the PC version of Plants vs. Zombies that contains 20 mini-games, along with 4 variations of Survival Endless Mode. These were going to be added into the game, but were eventually cancelled. Some players think that they were hidden for us to find and use a hacking program to access, so it does suck that we missed out on some mini-games, but with these cheat engines, I guess we didn't. Plants vs. Zombies DS Edition. There's a DS version of Plants vs. Zombies that is pretty much the same, aside from the music being oddly off-key, which I'll let you listen to here. Don't mind that it's a SpongeBob meme.
Well, you can't play music with a piece of paper!
Hooray! Hooray! That was great, Squidward. All those wrong notes you play made it sound more original.
What? I didn't play any wrong notes.
Yeah, see, you're playing it like this. When ordinarily it goes like this. I'm partially doing it in the key of A minor myself.
And the game does look quite a bit different, being downgraded in a way, which is kind of weird because it was on an iPhone. It seems weird to do a port to this anyways. But I do really like this style that they went for here. And speaking of style, Plants vs. Zombies Stylus. Also, the DS edition of Plants vs. Zombies was my girlfriend's first experience with the franchise. That's not something you get to hear every day. Mr. Stubbins. Mr. Stubbins is one of the minor antagonists of the Plants vs. Zombies comic series. He made his debut in Plants vs. Zombies Bully for You, and he is currently Dr. Zomboss's pet, who supports him for his schemes. Despite being a hedgehog, Mr. Stubbins is intelligent, as he could pilot vehicles, build robots, and even prevent Dr. Zomboss from stealing his machine. And while not physically appearing in Battle for Neighborville or any other mainline game, he was mentioned several times in Battle for Neighborville by Dr. Zomboss. Plasma P was made from a contest. Pretty soon after the launch of Garden Warfare 1 in 2014, PubCap decided to hold a contest for which new variant would be added to the game. And the Plasma P won. I had no clue about this, and at least from my experience, this guy is one of the more iconic variants of the series. I'm a gnome! No, not him. In Garden Warfare 2, once you've collected all of the golden gnomes, this song would play.
I'm a gnome, yes I am a gnome. On the lawn with my swan and my fawn, yeah. I'm a gnome, I'm a garden gnome. The lack of being real is the source of my appeal.
Short entry, I know, but it's weird, funny, and oddly really good. I love the song. Boss Mode. Boss Mode is a playable class in Garden Warfare 1 for both the plants and zombies. It works very differently from other classes, as it's not an actual character that does combat or support up front in the battlefield, but rather, it's a flying vehicle up in the air. The point of view is also very different, as every plant and zombie present on the field can be seen through a bird's eye view of the map. You would be able to deploy spotting, healing, and reviving stations along with an airstrike. The aircraft was also the highest health in the game among the playable classes, with a total of 2,000 health. To gather up resources to do any of these reinforcements on either side, you'd have to get sun for the plants and brains for the zombie side. I remember loving playing this mode a lot, and it actually felt like the mobile games quite a bit, but unfortunately, it didn't return for Garden Warfare 2. But here's hoping for if they ever decide to make a Garden Warfare 3, that it'll be playable again. Co-op mode. Bit shorter of an entry, but co-op mode is a game mode that only appears in the Xbox Live Arcade and PlayStation Network versions of Plants vs. Zombies. You would be able to play with a friend in this mode and have 11 unique levels to go through. Aside from the UI being obviously quite a bit different, pretty much just the same game, but you get to play with someone. Plants vs. Goblins. Haha, what a nice day in Neighborville. I'm sure no one will turn me into a Plants vs. Goblins, baby, that's right. This is the original— no, I'm just kidding. Plants vs. Goblins is the notorious ripoff of Plants vs. Zombies. Now, before reading up on this entry, I had no clue what this actually was, and I was thinking, oh, there might be just this game, maybe 2. Doubt if there's 3. There is 6 Plants vs. Goblins games. I mean, it's gotta be amazing. I mean, who doesn't love Zebra Media Software games like Imposter Camille, Plants vs. Zombies Minecraft mod? So there is like an oddly, really well-made Plants vs. Zombies Minecraft mod. So I decided to hop into it and see what it was like. And this mod is crazy. There's all the plants and zombies I could remember from the first game, and a lot of extra things that, if you're a Plants vs. Zombies fan, you'll just love. Like having the zombie football player armor to actually wear, and having a sort of pea shooter arm that you could shoot from. This is, like, no joke, one of the best mods I've seen that's based off of another franchise. I really like this mod. The Art of Plants vs. Zombies. This entry is about an art book full of things that never got into Plants vs. Zombies. Things like old concept art and concept art that, well, shaped the series, such as this zombie at the top right of all of these concepts. That's the main guy. That's the brown coat. Very good book. It shows how the franchise could have turned in some different directions in art style. And look at this Garden Warfare concept art. This is just amazing. Risk Plants vs. Zombies edition. So you know Risk? The board game? You know what would make it even better? Plants vs. Zombies would. Now, Risk isn't a stranger to collaborations for the board game. I mean, they have other war titles like Halo, Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. But I guess the real war series they were missing out on was the Battle for Neighborville. Plants vs. Zombies is, after all, the best war series out there. This is actually a very good collab. Obviously, it's a lot of references to Plants vs. Zombies on the board, but the actual models themselves also look really well detailed. Why there's an Xbox One game stuck to my ceiling. So this entry is kind of funny, kind of scary, and kind of weird, so it's a bit hard to sum up. So I'll read this article that was an interview on the guy of this story. I can explain. I was playing something or another on Steam the other night while sitting in my office watching the children, who were in an entirely different room, but that's besides the point. As I was playing, I leaned back in my chair and happened to spot a spider the size of a small Volkswagen on the ceiling directly above my head. With most of my body frozen in fear, my right hand took it upon itself to act. Searching over my desk for something capable of disabling the forward scout of a potential arachnid army from a safe range, say New Jersey. An empty monster can? Too light. Too little spider-slaying surface. Lemon pledge? No, that would just cause it to fall in my mouth. And the only thing worse than a spider in your mouth is a citrus spider in your mouth. Finally, my right hand grasped hope. Pushing back the desk slowly, I shook the can of spray adhesive vigorously, removed the cap, aimed, and fired. Within milliseconds, the large black spider was a large frosted black spider, the sort you may find in your cereal box if you have the sort of nightmares that I do. It took a few small steps across the ceiling and then froze in place. My weapon was effective. Or was it? What if the spider was faking, waiting for me to resume my game before adhering itself to my face? And wasn't an adhesive-coated spider hanging above my head any better than a regular one? I had to finish the job. I reached for the first firm, flat thing I could find, and I squished. And that's why Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare for the Xbox One is firmly stuck to my office ceiling. It's been there since yesterday and shows no signs of coming down anytime soon. Well, I think this guy was right about it not coming down anytime soon, because this article is old. There's been an updated version. Now, the Garden Warfare copy has been stuck to his ceiling for 5 years. So yeah, that's how Garden Warfare saved this guy from a spider. Patrice, I don't know how to say her name. Patrice Blazing is the main character of the comic book series. She's Crazy Dave's 11-year-old niece and battles against zombies alongside her Uncle Dave and her friend Nate Timely. She appears in every comic and has a massive role in the new / sort of half-released Plants vs. Zombies 3. And according to the wiki, her favorite plant is sunflower. She speaks English, French, Italian, and Crazy Dave, and she can understand 84% of Crazy Dave's words. Nate Timely, otherwise known as Nathan or just Nate, is another character in the comics. He's an 11-year-old aspiring explorer who battles zombies alongside Patrice Blazing and Crazy Dave. He's appeared in all 12 comic books, and just like Patrice, he has some weird wiki information on him. Quote, he has been known to have eaten 284 candy pieces in a single day. These two characters are very important to the comics. There's just not a whole lot to say about them, aside from what they actually do in the comics, which is basically just fighting zombies. Ask a Zombie. Ask a Zombie was a series of blog posts on the official PopCap Games website's blog section that ran from 2011 to 2014. Written in character by a newspaper zombie, simply addressed as Zombie. The series consisted of funny and wholesome responses to questions sent in by fans, and there was 75 editions of it made, until it was discontinued, and since the site has been taken down, the only way that I could see of reading these are from the actual wiki. Plants vs. Zombies Match. So you've probably never heard of this one, and neither did I. They had 2 playtests for a short time and has since been unavailable. These playtests spanned 2 months combined, but the actual gameplay was a basic match 3 game. There's ROMs of it that you can play, but I don't know why they didn't just release it. Especially since it looks like a genuinely well-made game, and even if it was pretty similar to Candy Crush, Plants vs. Zombies fans are going to play any Plants vs. Zombies game that comes out. So hopefully, they'll release it at some point. Gravedigger. The Gravedigger was going to be the support class for the zombies in Garden Warfare 1. Despite never being mentioned really, we do know a good bit about him. Like we know what his abilities would have been. The first one being a pretty basic grenade. And according to Justin Vibe, however you say that, someone who actually worked on the game, the second ability would have been able to raise AI zombies from his big tombstone, and his third ability being able to use that big tombstone on his back as a shield. Now I love the Scientist as a support class, but come on, this guy is sick. And despite him never being playable, we have seen some mentions of him in Garden Warfare 2. Like there's this image where it shows him and has his name with a big red X on it. And on the map Zombopolis, he appears in this ad for old-timey photos here on the left. And finally, seeing a full 3D model in game, he actually made an appearance on the Z-Tech factory map, where he just sits in this test tube. But hey, at least we got to see him. Plants vs. Zombies Adventures. Plants vs. Zombies Adventures was a Facebook-only tower defense game that was in beta, but got cancelled later on. The main gameplay of it was a mode called Road Trip, where you would take between 15 and 25 plants from your city and go out on a road trip with them. The gameplay was somewhat similar to the normal style of Plants vs. Zombies, aside from the weird isometric view, and not really having the same sun mechanic. Sure, sun did exist, but instead of using it to place plants, you would use it to revive the ones that had died. In this game, you could also spend coins you got while on road trips to attack other players' cities, which I assume also means Facebook friends, with zombies. It's a cool concept for a game, but it never really took off. Plants vs. Zombies Adventures being cancelled is also kind of sucky because, well, you'll see in this next entry. And for the last entry on this tier, Matilda, Bert, Dottie, and Officer Ron. All of these names are names of characters that appeared in the Plants vs. Zombies Adventures game. They're some of the only humans ever mentioned in the franchise, and they only appeared in this game. Almost half of all of the humans mentioned in this franchise are from this game, and even looking at the list of humans, one of them doesn't even have a picture. Tier 3, The Lawn. Plants vs. Zombies 3D Ancient Egypt, otherwise known as Plants vs. Zombies 3D Video Slot, is a video slot machine based off of the Ancient Egypt world in Plants vs. Zombies 2. It has 3D versions of the zombies and plants from Plants vs. Zombies 2 that look kind of weird, and it's oddly complex with how many different rewards, bonuses, and mechanics there are. Nut allergy death. In the console editions of the game, there's a very rare occurrence that zombies can die after getting near a walnut. Originally, I thought this was just a joke or a fan animation that someone made, but no, this is actually on the console versions. Michael Jackson Zombie. The original Dancing Zombie was completely based off of Michael Jackson from the Thriller music video, and well, in the description it says, "Any resemblance between Dancing Zombie and persons living or dead is purely coincidental." Unfortunately, a month or so after the game released, Michael Jackson died and his family requested him to be removed from the game. And now we have Disco Zombie, which I would say is a good replacement. Plants vs. Zombies movie. There was a Plants vs. Zombies movie being made by DreamWorks a while back, but was unfortunately left on the cutting room floor. We don't know a whole lot about it, but we do have some concept art for what it would have looked like these being shown here. Who knows, maybe with all the video game adaptations to shows and movies we're getting, we might get this someday. Crazy Dave is the last person on Earth. The theory goes that all the zombies led by Dr. Zomboss ate probably every human on Earth. This is suggested by the fact that there is no other human to be seen in any of the 3 main Plants vs. Zombies games, aside from 3, but we'll talk about that in a later entry. And many of the zombies themselves were probably former humans, with one exception, a man named Dave. Because Dave knew he was the only human left, his mind left him and went insane, which would explain why he thought the only way to stop zombies was with plants. This was proven untrue with the 3rd game. You know, we have Patrice, and I do like things from the comics being in the games, like Patrice and some other characters, but I think this would have been a really good way to kind of run the franchise with it just being Dave, and the story being oddly dark if you think a little bit too much into it. The blood on the bucket zombie is actually paint. So you guys probably remember the Buckethead zombie from the 1st game, and how there was blood on his head. Actually, no, this isn't blood at all. It was revealed through some concept art that this guy was actually meant to be a painter zombie, hence the red liquid on his bucket. It's weird that this wasn't stated more publicly somewhere, considering the games are targeted for kids mainly, but, you know, it makes for a good entry on the Iceberg. And I really want to see this painter zombie hopefully return someday. Garlic is married? According to Garlic's almanac entry in Plants vs. Zombies 1, he had a wife. Lane diversion isn't just Garlic's profession, it's his passion. He carries an advanced doctorate in redirection from the Brussels University. He'll talk all day about lane vectors and repulse arrays. He even pushes things into alternate avenues at home. Somehow his wife puts up with it. At least from my knowledge, this is the only plant to have a public relationship, and even though it's probably just a joke by the developers, I like to think that a lot of plants and zombies have super complex relationships. Walnuts can't feel pain. People wonder how I feel about getting constantly chewed on by zombies, says Walnut. What they don't realize is that with my limited senses, all I can feel is a kind of tingling, like a relaxing back rub. So I guess don't worry about any walnut or tall nut you place down because they don't care. It kind of feels relaxing to them. Plants vs. Zombies manga, or what the Iceberg linked to is Chinese Plants vs. Zombies books. It's hard finding a whole lot of information on these because, well, it's all in Chinese. But yeah, there's so many Chinese Plants vs. Zombies books, like way more than you would think. They all look like pretty basic kids books, but it's Plants vs. Zombies, and with all these books, they have so much more than we have over here. Pop Smarts. Quick entry, but in the comics, Zomboss eats the zombie version of Pop-Tarts, called Pop Smarts. Plants vs. Zombies KFC buckets. There was a KFC and Plants vs. Zombies collab that happened in 2012, and the wild thing about it, aside from these two companies doing anything with each other, is that I can't find a single listing for any of these buckets or cups from this collab anywhere. There's some weird Plants vs. Zombies merch I can find, like the pea shooter stylus, that's no problem. But I've searched all over eBay, all over AliExpress, I can't find anything, so I think that these might be some of the more rare merchandise in the whole franchise. Unicorn Chomper. The Unicorn Chomper is a variant of the Chomper that you could only get if you got max rank in the original Garden Warfare and imported your characters to Garden Warfare 2 before a certain date. Because of this, it's super rare that you'll find anyone who legitimately got these. The Chomper also had a special ability called Rainbow Warp, where he would teleport like a scientist instead of burrowing under the ground like a normal Chomper. Iceberg Lettuce was supposed to be a character in Battle for Neighborville. So Iceberg Lettuce was a very close to complete class in Battle for Neighborville, but never saw the light of day. There's footage of people playing the character like this. It just sucks because the character was so close to completion and had so many abilities and a full model done, it just never got added to the game. Original Gargantuar designs. This entry is about the original scrap designs for the Gargantuar. It was originally going to not be as scary, but still pretty disturbing. You can see how these designs were close to what we got in the final product, but not exactly. There's also weird variations, like for the social edition of the game, there is the Encourager Gargantuar. We'll talk about how many other variations that the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies gets later. But yeah, there was a good chance that the Gargantuar could have looked like this guy in some white underwear and very, very disturbing looking. Wild West was supposed to be a farm. In the Art of Plants vs. Zombies book, mentioned in the last tier, it's shown that the Wild West from Plants vs. Zombies 2 was originally going to be a farm. And this concept art was pretty well thought out. There was a lot of different designs and items, and a tractor that they would even use. And I would love to see these levels and zombies brought back in a future game, but with how Plants vs. Zombies 3 is going, not so sure if we'll get much variation anytime soon. Original Plants vs. Zombies 2 map design. When Plants vs. Zombies 2 released, the maps, well, they looked much better. The level and design of menus gradually got a bit easier, not that the levels were easy or anything. But these old maps, some people thought were harder, and I really prefer the old way of showing all the levels. The new way is still cool, but it feels simplified and dumbed down when we had this amazing art before. Corn in real life, not clickbait. Yeah, there was an ad for Garden Warfare 2 featuring a live-action Colonel Corn. Not knowing that this was a later entry, I had it as background video in the last tier. But yeah, there he is, the Colonel himself in real life. PopCap and EA used to be so much more creative with how they'd advertise things, and I really just want to see some of that creativity come back. Plants vs. Zombies Pinball. In Zen Pinball 2, there is a Plants vs. Zombies pinball machine. It's shockingly well made, like everything Plants vs. Zombies, and I gotta admit, while looking up footage for this game, I just got hooked and watched like 15 minutes of gameplay for it. It has a lot of the normal zombies and different references to the different games. It even has a Crazy Dave car that drives out and stuff. It looks really good. And for the final entry in this tier, the Brain Bucket. The Brain Bucket was an exclusive item for Team Fortress 2 that you could only obtain if you got Plants vs. Zombies on Steam before May 5th, 2011. I could find about 200 or so in circulation on the Steam market, ranging from less than $1 to $72. And this time I can't tell if it's the Plants vs. Zombies fans or Team Fortress fans going crazy with price. I think this is such a cool way to advertise a game on Steam, and I hope they do it for more games in the future. Tier 4, the pool. Crazy Dave created the zombies using fog. In Plants vs. Zombies 1, the loading screen has zombies coming out of a purple fog, and in Plants vs. Zombies Adventures, to advance, you have to clear purple fog where zombies appear from. The reason people think Crazy Dave made the fog is that he used to be called the Fog Man. He would hide in fog and scare people by jumping out, but some people think it has a deeper meaning. I don't think Dave has the mental capacity to really create zombies from fog, or maybe that's the thing that made him crazy. So I don't know. It's a cool theory nonetheless, and the future theories in this iceberg get even more interesting. Limited editions. Now I've talked about the DS edition for Plants vs. Zombies and how there's a really goofy, but in my opinion, amazing looking pea shooter stylus. But what I didn't know is that for the DS version, there's also a Yeti edition that contains a toy Plants vs. Zombies Yeti. And I couldn't find this thing anywhere. Even just researching on it, there wasn't very much information, but certainly not for any shopping methods. I checked eBay, Google Store. There is nothing I could find selling this little Yeti toy. And that's because, well, any limited editions, especially that contained things like this, were sold much less. You know, there wasn't as much room on shelves for it, and not as many people would go out of their way to buy them. But I think it's really cool when companies do things like this. Plasma Pea was based off of the night sky. The winner of the contest for the new plant variant that turned into the iconic Plasma Pea we all know and love said that the original design was actually based off of the night sky. And they do actually like the Plasma Pea more, but since they didn't name it, PopCap had to give it a name, so they just went ahead and named it Plasma Pea and went from there. Talking Zombatar. Talking Zombatar was a cancelled virtual pet game. The player could dress up their zombie, train them to dance, shoot videos with them, earn different daily rewards, and even take pictures with them. They were also going to repeat everything the player said. This game was scrapped for an unknown reason and never got released to the public. However, there is a trailer for it. Plants vs. Zombies Web Edition. Plants vs. Zombies Web Edition was basically a free trial version of Plants vs. Zombies in Adobe Flash on the PopCap website. The game wouldn't let you progress past level 2-4, but it did have a survival and puzzle mode as well. And if someone unlocked survival and puzzle modes on their computer already, they would be able to continue playing through these modes on the Flash version. Survival mode on the web version is a modified version of Survival Endless, which takes place during the night, and the player can only choose 4 plants at a time. And puzzle mode consists of a modified version of Icebreaker, and the player's progress would be lost on survival and puzzle modes if you quit the game at all. Burger King Toys. This is very similar to the KFC entry, where it's just another collab with a food place, but this time it was Burger King. There were different buckets that had comic strips on them and stickers you could collect, plus even some masks, wristbands, and a small game that you could play. Not a whole lot of fast food places that do collabs with any franchise go this far. This one just was a bit crazy with how much they decided to do. Bill Nye commercial. As a commercial for the Origins Access subscription, EA decided to get Bill Nye himself to talk about Garden Warfare 2 and how you could play it early. Aside from EA basically just flexing how much money they have, it's really funny seeing Bill Nye talk about anything Plants vs. Zombies related. Hairy Zombie Plush. This plush is apparently extremely rare and near impossible to find. The design of the zombie doesn't appear in any of the Plants vs. Zombies games, and the only images I could find about it were on the wiki page, hence the rarity and, well, price if you can find any listing anywhere for this thing. If you've ever watched Breaking Bad, you'll already know what this one is about. Garden Warfare 2 Heisenberg Easter Egg. This is a sketch of Heisenberg in Breaking Bad. It's gotten to be a pretty big meme since Breaking Bad had its resurgence a few years ago. But if you go to the soccer field in Garden Warfare 2, you'll be able to find a zombie version of the sketch. Just a funny little Easter egg that they decided to throw in there. And I would be a bit worried if any kids understood this one. Project Hot Tub. Project Hot Tub was the name assigned to a cancelled game originally going to be developed by PopCap. Nothing much is known about it except that it was going to be a action-adventure single-player title, and it was apparently going to release for the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One. This game was cancelled by EA in favor of Project Ragtag's development, which was a codename for a Star Wars game, and that game got cancelled as well. Plants vs. Zombies Garden Warfare 3Z Arena. The 3Z Arena was a sort of ride/location in the Carowinds Park in North Carolina. If you've ever been on a ride where you shoot at any like cardboard cutouts with red dots with a blaster on your cart, it's basically that, but on a massive screen, where you got to travel to different places in the Plants vs. Zombies universe and shoot plants if you're a zombie, and, well, shoot zombies if you're a plant. Unfortunately, it shut down in July of 2022, but it looked like it was genuinely really well made. Tier 5, The Sewers. Evil Dave. Evil Dave is a character that appears in battle in the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies 2. According to his dialogue, he came to ridicule his brother Crazy Dave. The player has to fight Evil Dave's plant army 6 times within a certain amount of time in order to defeat them. Each time the player defeats Evil Dave, they will get bigger and bigger rewards that would outweigh the rewards you got when going against another player. This guy's pretty weird, but it's weirder that he's only in the Chinese version of the game. China gets an odd amount of exclusive things when it comes to Plants vs. Zombies. Plants vs. Zombies All-Stars. Speaking of Chinese exclusives, Plants vs. Zombies All-Stars was the 3rd game available only to Chinese players. This was another Plants vs. Zombies game, but with a lot of new and weird mechanics, such as a sort of evolution of plants. This list shows who turned into who. And this game also had a different leveling system, with some different worlds as well, like the Kung Fu and Viking world. I'm honestly really jealous that we didn't get this over here in the West. Harvey Flaxcaster. Harvey Flaxcaster is one of the few unseen characters in Plants vs. Zombies. In level 4-5 of PvZ1, Crazy Dave mentioned Harvey Flaxcaster by telling the player that he and Harvey used to break vases when they were bored. Sometime later, Harvey moved away from the town, explaining why we've never seen him on screen. I really hope he shows up in a future game or comic, because it's crazy that with how few human characters are in this franchise, that not one, but more than one, have no appearance to them. Plants vs. Zombies Social Edition. Chinaman, they just keep getting these exclusives. Plants vs. Zombies Social Edition is the Chinese version of Plants vs. Zombies. It contains new plants, zombies, and some new weird features to the game, such as what looks like a very big town system, and being able to connect with friends in-game. The new plants are pickled pepper, icy fume shroom, fire shroom, flame wood, vine nut, Super Chomper, Future Star, and Calm Chuck. And the new zombies being a Mustache Zombie, Talisman Zombie, and Rabbit Imp. And the trailer for this game has just an amazing, wild version of zombies on your lawn. And there are different zombie variations aside from just the new zombies, like the previously mentioned Encourager Zombie, that's a variant of the Gargantuar, and weirder ones like the Drinking Monk Zombie. After all, there are brand new worlds in this game, and it's just crazy the amount of content they get for Plants vs. Zombies. Imps were scrapped children zombies. This entry is about the imps, or what people think were meant to be children zombies. From what I could find, PubCap hasn't said anything on this, and I doubt these were really meant to be children zombies, but I mean, if every zombie is from a human, I really don't think they are children zombies. I think they just wanted a smaller enemy in the game. But yeah, it's weird that there's a possibility that these could have been originally children zombies. Plants vs. Zombies board game. Plants vs. Zombies the board game was a board game that you would roll dice, which places zombies on players' yards. Players then respond by playing different plant cards to remove those zombies from their board, or by playing different cards making it harder for the other player to manage zombies on their boards. Unfortunately, it was never released to the public, and these 2 images here are the only ones I could find of it. Mainly, I think it's hard to find much information on this game because looking up Plants vs. Zombies board game just pops up the Plants vs. Zombies edition of Risk. But yeah, there's not a whole lot available for this entry. It looks like it would have been a really well-made card game. It looks like it has a lot of thought put into it, but yeah, was never released. Each game series is a different timeline. So in Plants vs. Zombies, there's a lot of plot holes and things that seem like massive deals and are never mentioned again. And a big theory around these is that every game series is in a different timeline, meaning the story of Garden Warfare, mainline Plants vs. Zombies games, and spin-off games, like Adventures, are all in their own different versions of the Plants vs. Zombies universe, which would make a lot more sense than being introduced like 7 new characters in Adventures and then them never being brought up again. I like to think that Plants vs. Zombies 1 and 2 are connected, and 3 isn't. I don't know if that's just me not liking 3, but I think the direction with 1 and 2 was going really good and 3 didn't make much sense at all. But yeah, I think it's a really cool theory that all of these games are in their own different timelines. Dog Walker. The Dog Walker is a zombie type found in the beta of Plants vs. Zombies 1 that can be seen while walking a dog. The zombie was scrapped, but then later used in Plants vs. Zombies Heroes. Wish we got to see these guys in another mainline game, but for some reason it makes sense for Plants vs. Zombies Heroes to have a weird unused zombie type. Brave Dave. Brave Dave, the younger brother of Crazy Dave, was introduced in the social edition of Plants vs. Zombies. He was the mayor of Plant Town and had apparently been eaten by zombies, so Crazy Dave took over for him. Kind of dark for a kid's game, but yeah, not a whole lot is known about him, aside from he looks extremely bulk and he's dead. Plants vs. Zombies Farm. Plants vs. Zombies Farm is a Plants vs. Zombies theme park in Wuxi, China. Based on Plants vs. Zombies 2 mainly, it's centered around agriculture and somewhat looks like a big play area for kids, and also is just a place for a lot of different Plants vs. Zombies themed shows. All the footage I could find was on Douyin, so apologies for not really being able to credit them too well, as I can't tell who the author is, who the maker of the Chinese TikTok is. But yeah, it looks absolutely massive. Tier 6, underground. The zombie invasion has been going on for decades. This entry is because of the almanac entry for the Imitator that reads, "I remember the zombie wars back in '76, says Imitator in a raspy old man's voice. Back then, we didn't have all these fancy pea shooters and jalapenos. All we had was guts, and a spoon." So, the war in Plants vs. Zombies has apparently been going on for many years, multiple decades in fact. And I believe it goes back even further, considering the founding of Bloom and Doom, stated in the official guidebook, was in 1968. And if that's true, that also makes the Imitator at least 66 years old. Well, that is if plants get enlisted at 18. Can't really say too much as to how their military works. Crazy Dave speaks Crazy Dave. In the comic Lawnmageddon, it's confirmed that Crazy Dave speaks his own language or dialect, just called Crazy Dave. And in Patrice's entry a few tiers ago, it's also stated that she understands about 84% of Crazy Dave's words. So my assumption is that it's just a very weird dialect, and well, she's not the only person that can't really understand him. Barry Brigade. Barry Brigade was a character being worked on for the Battle for Neighborville game, but never made it in. Instead, it was replaced by the Iceberg lettuce that, well, also didn't make it into the game. We don't know a whole lot about this character, aside from having an early model of it, and take this with a grain of salt because it's just one person's Reddit post, but it was supposed to have lots of bullets and around, a rocket, and a turret ability. Yeah, it just sucks how much content gets cancelled for this franchise, and specifically for Battle for Neighborville fans, it must be really disappointing hearing all this cool stuff about your game and everything being cancelled. Plants vs. Zombies TV Edition. This is a playable version of Plants vs. Zombies 1 for a Chinese Android TV model. It's the same as normal Plants vs. Zombies 1, aside from having different menus and it's Chinese and, well, it's on a TV, so I guess not too similar, is it? Main gameplay wise though, it is just the same game. More Garden Warfare 1 maps were supposed to return and get zombified. More maps from Garden Warfare 1 were apparently supposed to return in Garden Warfare 2 and get zombified versions, like how Garden Center from Garden Warfare 1 got turned into Aqua Center in Garden Warfare 2 and was taken over by zombies. I really wish we got more zombified maps like this because, well, it's a great way to have more maps into the game and not have to do a whole lot of remodeling, and it's really cool seeing the different atmosphere that just one map could have by a few things changed and the skybox changing as well. Tier 7 China. I imagine this tier is called this because if you go into the achievements page of Plants vs. Zombies 1 and scroll all the way down, you can, well, get to China. That, and China is a massive part of most of these entries, having a lot of exclusive content that we never got here in the West. Plants vs. Zombies DS Edition soundtrack plays the wrong notes. I guess I accidentally talked about this in an earlier entry, but yeah, the DS version of Plants vs. Zombies sounds completely different when it comes to music. Here, listen to it for a second.
I'm partially doing it in the key of A minor myself.
I imagine this has something to do with the speakers on the DS maybe not being able to output the same frequencies or whatever. But yeah, weird difference to have between versions. Plants vs. Zombies Lost Betas. There are a lot of different beta versions in Plants vs. Zombies that looked very different to what we got in full release. Heck, the 2004 Insanaquarium 2 build has aliens instead of zombies. Yes, this game was going to be centered around aliens instead of zombies originally, and was going to be a DS sequel to Insanaquarium. Then there's the 2005 Weed Links beta, where this is one of the earliest screenshots of the build that we can date back to 2005, featuring early designs of Cabbage Pult, rendering Cabbage Pult as one of the first official plants ever made for the series. Then we have the 2006 Insanaquarium Deluxe build that shows a very early version of the Choose Your Seeds menu. We also have a GIF of the early lawnmower animation and some pictures of old plant designs compared to their newer ones. We also have a screenshot of what the game looked like on the full sort of board or screen, I guess you would call it. And it looked pretty similar to what we got, obviously. Art style is a lot different, and it does just look like a Flash game, but you can see it's turning more into Plants vs. Zombies. Then we have the 2007 Lawn of the Dead build that looks near identical to what we got on release, the only real differences being the menus. We also have the 2008 April Fool's Day build, where the developers put in the iconic ice level. And finally, the only playable build from what I could find, the December 2nd, 2008 Bloom and Doom build. Yes, all of these titles were originally going to be the name of the game. This build was a version a few months prior to release that had certain things that didn't quite make it into the game, like the dog walker zombie I mentioned earlier. Crazy Dave's car. Crazy Dave's car has been confirmed to be a Toyota Corolla, as stated by PopCap. His car is also an obtainable item in Plants vs. Zombies Adventures that had the description, Crazy Dave's car has no seatbelts, airbags, or even brakes. It's not even clear that this thing runs on gasoline. What is he putting in the gas tank? So yeah, Crazy Dave drives a Toyota Corolla that may not even run on gas. PVZ U53RDV. So this is a YouTube channel that made a Plants vs. Zombies ARG. This ARG was basically just a cursed version of the original Plants vs. Zombies game. This game had all the zombies having different black voids for eyes, a deformed Crazy Dave that was a floating head with one eye and just two arms, all of the plants crying, and a really weird version of the soundtrack playing in the background. And since it's mostly Spanish, I can't really understand a whole lot of what's happening. Not that I think someone who even knows Spanish could, with how crazy it is. But yeah, it seems to just be a very messed up version of the game, and it even has a really cursed version of Zombies on Your Lawn, with the zombies repeating, "Don't feel safe." In another video, having the plants in the Zen garden burning, yelling for help, and in another, Crazy Dave getting killed by a massive wasp. There's only 4 videos up as of now, and it's an absolute fever dream if you click on it not knowing what you're getting yourself into. But yeah, so far it's just a cursed version of Plants vs. Zombies, and hopefully the creator of this decides to put out some more videos. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I know this was just a compilation of the 3 Iceberg parts, but you know, a lot of people like a complete iceberg even if it is just combined. And I hope you enjoyed. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I will see you next Friday.